you ever wondered what it actually takes to build a sustainable product from the ground up? Not in theory, but in real life. Not just choosing better materials, but navigating certification, manufacturing constraints, cost structures, and trade offs that no one really talks about publicly. If you ever thought, why don't many more companies just do better? Today, we are going to unpack that, as you are not alone. And that is exactly what we are exploring into today's episode. But before we dig in, I really want to just say thank you so much for so many of you that has actually rated and reviewed our podcast on Podchaser. And also for those that grabbed my online course, which I'll put the link in the show notes as well. That really helps us to grow and expand and to just get more amazing guests on here. So thank you so much for that. Alrighty, let's dig in today's episode. Hey, crazy birds, and welcome to another episode of Mama Earth Talk, where we dive into real conversations about sustainability. We share honest stories, and we explore practical ways to reduce waste, go green, and live more consciously. I'm your host, Mariska Nell. Today's episode is a little bit different because I'm not speaking as this sustainability advisor or consultant. I have got my founder's hat on in the middle of building something. So I am currently building Tails and Tones, which is a sustainable pet hard goods company that was inspired by our French bulldog Piper. And honestly, for years, I've advised companies on sustainability decisions, sustainability reporting, and kind of everything that goes around that. And on paper, many of those decisions seems relatively straightforward. When you can easily switch suppliers, you can improve packaging materials, you can add certifications. But building your own company, especially when you are bootstrapped, feels so much different. There is not a lot of money to play around with certain things. And, because this is sustainability. It isn't theory. It is really in how we practice this. So, looking at some tooling cost with some manufacturers, I need to have a minimum order quantity, my MOQs, cash flow, certification fees, and just manufacturing realities, because some of the big sustainable manufacturers that work with quite a few big brands, they don't necessarily want to take a chance on a small startup from the get-go. You kind of have to build up and earn some of those trusts. So learn that the hard way. And whether your company actually survives long enough to make that impact. And I've just been sitting with this question, and it was actually a question that I got posed to during my thesis, when I had to defend my thesis. And that was, do you build something that is 100% sustainable from day one? Or, if it is 60% more sustainable, do you still go for it? And getting something 100% sustainable from day one, there is a lot of delays bringing your product to the market. And especially if, funding can be a little bit of an issue. So it is there's been amazing companies that roll out 100% sustainable, and I applaud them because, oh my goodness, that is challenging. So I kind of went with, do we build something that is way better than what currently exists and we commit to improve over time? And today I want to kind of unpack that properly, because sustainability, especially when it comes to products, physical products, hard good, isn't just about we put some greenwashing on, we call it a day, because you guys have listened to the show and you know how I feel about greenwashing. There's a lot of stuff that has to go in on the back of stuff, like the engineering parts of it, And one of the biggest shifts for me has been to really understanding that perfection can become paralysis. And if we frame sustainability as a kind of all or nothing, only companies with really deep pockets can participate in that. But if we frame it as a directional improvement, more founders can actually build responsibly. And that doesn't mean that we are lowering product standards. It means we are sequencing them. So sustainability isn't about, doing everything at once. It's about knowing what comes first and why, and a sequencing requiring structure. Now, before I decided on a single product, I created a framework. So I made up a business plan, what I want Tails and Tones to be, and I aligned it with 4 pillars: the environment, people, economy, and the culture. And that gave me really a filter for decision making. So, because sustainability without structure becomes really reactive, we kind of go with the flow. We're not sure what does our culture of this company stand for. But with structure, we can really navigate the trade-offs consciously. It makes it so much easier when you need to make those hard decisions. And if you're building something physical, you need a framework before, you actually need that logo, the brand, whatever. I feel that is so important. And it doesn't have to be complicated. There's so many easy ways that you can actually do that. Now, with Tails and Tones, it is a hard goods company. So hard goods basically means we make physical products. And that means sustainability really lives in the engineering constraints. So when we design this physical product, we need to look at a couple of things. Now, one of the first things that I added in there is the end of life pathway. That was the most important thing for me, because the last thing I wanted was this product just to have to end up in landfill because there was no other choices. But other things also include what material choices you're going to make, your manufacturing processes, your packaging formats. How do you kind of assemble this? Is it repairable? So those decisions basically compound over years. So my products, I wanted to design, obviously it's a pet product, and I want you to be able to use that same product throughout your dog's lifespan, which we went on around 11 years as an average. And then beyond kind of these physical constraints that I looked into, I also looked at 6 design principles to anchor every design and engineering decision. I didn't add it for marketing. I added as constraints that we need to make sure that we've got these principles in place, because without it, it just becomes an aesthetic product. And, are we actually creating a better product than what's currently on the market? So sustainable material systems, I wanted to be able to design for the long term rather than disposability. So our first product is an elevated food bowl. And I got a lot of people asking me, why aren't you using bamboo for this product? And I would have loved to use bamboo for this product, but it is kind of going against some of my principles to have this product being used for as long as possible, and to make sure that people, it's easy to clean, versus if we have a wood product and something, and now you need to start adding, this product needs a treatment after this many years, and it becomes really hard for some people to maintain the look and feel of that product. And what's going to happen? They're going to end up throwing it away. So some of the other things I looked at is, to make sure that it can actually grow with our dog, that, you can raise the levels as your dog needs it and have more modular height extensions. Now, if this system really adapts across life stages, it will really eliminate multiple replacement cycles. And, here's the uncomfortable part. Designing for longevity can reduce repeat purchases. So we're not going to have the same customer that's going to buy our elevated food bowl twice. Well, I hope not. I hope that this product will last you a lifetime. So some companies actually design so that it can be replaced. But We want to make sure that we've got all sorts of added stuff for you, that there's replacement bowls if your bowl break, because we'll have ceramic, we're going to have stainless steel, but it is really something that we need to look at. Then some of the care-centered design. So how is this product actually improving the life of our dogs and of us? It needed to, help. Obviously, this product was created after we went to our physiotherapy session with our dog, and she asked, "How does your dog eat and drink?" And that question really shifted everything, because feeding happens for some dogs, it's once, twice, or 3 times a day, every day throughout their life. And that can really, really strain their necks if they are in the wrong posture, especially for specific breeds. And so sustainability is not just environmental, it is also about their physical well-being. So we wanted to make sure that we are ticking those boxes. And then intentional simplicity. So every single element in this design, I felt, must earn its place. There should be no unnecessary decorations and things that, is not really required. No complexity that is really visible to the user. I didn't want gimmicks or really, really so hard to work this item. And I also wanted to reduce waste. Now, this was a commitment to long-lasting quality. So durability is part of sustainability. So if a product has, really a durable lifespan and the product stays good for as long as it can, it helps with the sustainability. So we needed tight tolerances, we need stable joints, seeing is there possible ways to make it scratch resistant, not wobbling, because also for some dogs, they love to just tip over their bowl. And is this actually something that's going to last about, 10, 11, maybe more years instead of 2 years? So some of these bowls are replaced, almost every 2 years. So that means you're going to have multiple bowls over your dog's lifespan. So we want to try and eliminate that. That's measurable impact, because if we can do that for thousands of dogs around the world, that is thousands of bowls that is not going to have to be purchased because they're using ours. And then transparency and growth. So we are definitely not going to get everything perfect on day one. And I know that. And I'm frank and I'm honest with that. I'm saying we aiming to be the most sustainable pet product in the world. But we need to communicate that. We need to be transparent about everything, what we do, why we choose some materials, because a lot of people might think, oh, are you using plastic injection molding? Why would you do that over bamboo? Again, it takes us through to these principles and being accountable. And sustainability is really about practice what you kind of preach. And then looking at the end of life, which for me was the number one again, that needs to be looked at the very beginning. So our manufacturing side, components, it needs to be disassembled. If we are using different materials, we need to try and minimize that as far as possible. And parts that needs to be replaceable. We maybe don't have them all online, so that you can purchase the replacement parts. But if you contact us, we'd definitely be able to give you replacement parts or something, and then start later rolling out if we see, and also detect and maybe in future versions create a better version if we see there are some flaws. And packaging that can actually be reused or recycled. And how do we look at our packaging? Is there a way that we can actually design our product that we, use as little volume as well? Because sending stuff from wherever all around the world also has an impact. And so packaging is such an important thing, and it should be considered early on in your design. And it's really part of the system. Where trade-offs really get real, this is kind of where the nuance lives. And we've kind of spoken about the bamboo, kind of in wet environments, bamboo can warp, it can really degrade over time. And for a feeding system that's exposed to like water daily, durability matters so much. And it can also do like a mold buildup. So that is the other thing which, is or can be toxic to our dogs as well. So I really wanted to avoid that at all cost. And so, the most sustainable looking material might not always be the most sustainable choice for the specific product that you're doing, because bamboo is an amazing product. And I mean, there's so many things that I think is so great about it, but we need to weigh that up against all of these principles and see, does that actually meet all of these principles? And like dishwasher safe requirements actually limits materials, because now you are looking at a higher temperature that the items are going to be washed on. They will be washed daily. So what does that mean? And also modularity. When we are making products modular, that really also increase like tooling cost. It increase like maybe there's some moving parts. Like how do we place that all in like, something that's working and still call it sustainable? And that can also be complex. Now, sustainability is rarely about an obvious choice. It's really about the appropriate ones. And I mean, that is just like kind of speaking from the manufacturing side. And then we come to certifications. Now, I've always been hammering about certifications as it is a very easier thing if you're an established company to kind of start looking at these certifications and get it. And I really feel it's important because it almost gives a transparency from what you are doing using a certification that people trust. And then, it kind of builds that trust a bit easier. So I've always been very pro certifications, and I still are. But I also feel in a startup, it should be something that you think about and see when you are building your company. How do we look forward to that? But it might not necessarily be a starting point. But that, again, depends. If you've got very deep pockets and you can spend a couple of $1,000 for certificates, then by all means, if you want to start with it, start with it. But it really costs a lot. You've got your application fees, you've got auditing fees, all your renewals, administrative time. So it really just depends on your scale. And this can really run into thousands each year. So instead of chasing like these certification badges, I have mapped out a certification strategy that really aligns with our business milestones, because certification should follow also your readiness. Like you need to be able to support this. If you only have $10,000 to start your company and your certification is going to cost $5,000, and it means your company is going to go under within weeks because financially you couldn't afford it, then you are way better off working the certifications in at a later stage. And it is really important to understand that manufacturers may already follow many of those required practices. So I've actually spoken to quite a few of the manufacturers and I said to them, do you have any certifications, in sustainability, whether it was ISO, B Corp or something? And many of them actually said, we used to have that, but we didn't renew, but we are still doing X, Y, and Z, and kind of list and said, if this is something that you would like us to pursue, then you will have to bear the cost for the certification. So there might be some really great manufacturers that already tick all those boxes that you can work with. And once you, kind of have the money for the certification, then add it. But it is something that you need to look at when you find your manufacturers, because if they are really doing everything that you should not do to get those certifications, that is one hell of a task to get them to do that. So you rather want to align with a manufacturer that's, I would say, 90% already there or even 100%, and they just need the certification fees and things to be paid. Now, I've mapped out some of the certifications and things that I want to do, and I've done it kind of in this like order. So obviously, material level compliance, that would be one of the first things to get. So that would be more stuff that's food grade, like your stainless steel documentation. If we've got any plastics, that it's BPA free, any FDA compliances, and also in the EU, like the I think it's pronounced REACH. REACH compliance. So there's quite a few compliances for the specific product, and that just protects the customer. It reduces any legal risk, and it is not really glamorous, but they do matter. So those would definitely be the ones that I kind of look at first. And once we've got that, then kind of move on as we kind of get more, revenue coming into the company to afford more certifications. So the next one for me would be 1% for the planet. So I actually had their CEO on a previous podcast. I'll link it up in the show notes. And this basically requires you to donate 1% of your gross sales. So it's not your profit. And that goes to environmental causes. So even if you're not profitable, 1% of every single dollar that comes in, that goes to these environmental causes. So it really creates a financial accountability from day one, and it validates that giving. And it is something that you can put on your product as well. You can use their seal as well. And it really just complements operational sustainability. It doesn't really replace it. So you get to work with their team, and then you basically select an organization that you want to work with to provide them with the support of obviously your 1%. So again, it come at a cost to actually, pay them annually. You need to then pay the 1%. So we are not there yet, even though I would love to be there. Other stuff that we can make sure that we are using is either recycled, like certified recycled, or FSC packaging. But again, with that certification, there is so many different levels of things that can play a role. So your manufacturer might be able to purchase this FSC certified paper to make your packaging, but themselves are not a certified like person to be able to make it. Then technically, yes, your pulp was, sourced from that, but the guys making it is not. So there's like this whole gray area. But definitely that would be something to kind of look in, and to make sure that, you've got this from a supply chain decision from the get-go. Then there is a lot more like industry-specific accountability. Now, one that I was looking at is like the Pet Sustainability Coalition. So they kind of, it's a good organization to be part of, and they focus on operational transparency and improvement. So definitely, for the pet related, and for every single industry, there is these as well. Now, at like kind of later stages, I would definitely work on other certifications like B Corp, making sure we evaluate the governance, the workers, community, environment, and customers. And it requires documentation systems, audits, and formal structures. So for an early bootstrap company, this might often only be your milestone at like kind of year 3, year 5, not just because it is unimportant, but because like the sequencing of it matters. And with B Corp, you also need to be operational for a period of time before you can actually apply for this. Now, so one of the key things that I would suggest for any startup to create, and even if you already have a business and you don't have any sustainability things in place, is really look at a certification like roadmap for yourself. So for me, like in year 1, it will obviously be all the material compliances. I'll try and see if we can get the FSC aligned packaging, and then also look at the 1% for the planet. And then in year 2 and 3, I would look at more formal sustainability reporting, so that we are kind of geared up when we do want to apply for other certifications, and also look at a industry specific like the Pet Sustainability Coalition. Just look at, a few different things, because with especially sustainability reporting, it's really going to give you that like lens where you can look at everything and you can measure where are you doing things that most probably, has the biggest impacts, and what are some of those low-hanging fruits that's easy to convert, that can move from intention to accountability. And then from like kind of year 3 to like year 5, that is when, I'll kind of look at the B Corp, and also see whether there's ISO environmental standards, that we can apply for, some carbon neutral certifications, and circularity focused certifications like cradle to cradle and things like that. And I mean, this is just like kind of the guideline. If I see in year 1, wow, we're doing so well, we might be able to speed some of these up, then it is definitely something that I would consider, because this is kind of laying out the sequence, but it's not like a badge collection. We are not on a scavenge hunt trying to get all or as many as badges as possible. In the end, we want to be the most sustainable pet company in the world, and we want to make sure that we live up to that and that we are transparent through that, what we are doing. But honestly, what I've mentioned previously, certification does cost money. So it is audits, it is renewals, it is admin time. And when you are the only person currently in your company, that time is really, really kind of a valuable resource that we need to make sure gets allocated to places that's going to move the needle. And if you are doing everything or the best, like with what you've got, to be as sustainable as possible, it might be something that can then follow in the future. Because when you're bootstrapping, those costs completely directly associate the production development, the inventory, the cash flow sustainability. And again, what I've said previously, I approach some of these big players that manufacture so many sustainable companies, brands like products, and none of them even replied. Then later on, I found out, they only work with companies that does minimum orders of like 20,000. And, your company has to be X amount of revenue a year before they'll work with you. So it is definitely a challenge. It is so hard. And also if you maybe, if you're, I don't know, Mr. Beast and you're starting a company, a pet company, most probably manufacturers will be like, hell yeah, I don't care if your pet company is like 2 weeks old. We'll work with you and create the most sustainable company, because they know of what he's done with previous companies. So if you don't come in with that, it really makes a difference. So yeah, Mr. Beast, if you want to start a sustainable pet company, give us a holler. So I just kind of ask, quite a few questions before we look into some of the certifications and things. Is this certification going to improve my operations? Is it going to improve the credibility, my risk management, or is it just an optic? Like, if it's just optics, it definitely waits. But profit isn't the enemy of sustainability. I feel we definitely need profit. It's our oxygen in business. We need to be profitable as well, because if our company is not financially stable, all of that environmental ambitions that we've got is not going to see the light of day. So yeah, that was kind of in a nutshell what is happening behind the scenes, some of the like thoughts, processes and things that's going on. And if you are planning on starting like especially a hard goods business, or even any business that you want to be as sustainable as possible, I honestly cannot recommend highly enough to start with a framework. Because if you've got a framework, it really helps to be your North Star, to know that if a manufacturer comes to you and say, use this cacao that is most possibly coming from some child labor farms or something, then you can go through your framework, but it's like a quarter of the price or a 20th of the price. You can go through your framework and you might see in there that we do not support any causes that uses child labor or X, Y, and Z. And then it becomes an easy no or hard pass. But, and I mean, that's an easy one. For me, I would really try to avoid things like that. But it might be something that you really need to think about if what is aligning with you. And sometimes those decisions will be hard because it means bringing a product to market today versus bringing a product to market in 1 year's time, but you're following your framework. Then also design principles if you have a physical product. Or even, if you've got not a physical product, what are you offering and things. But again, back at more of physical, like, do we validate the materials? Like, what are we using? Is it designed for repair, for longevity? And also to understand what type of things are we going to go for, like the certifications, our sequence, our certification strategy, and also measure before you market. So kind of look at the market. Like, I've interviewed so many people over the last years, well, basically since I started my thesis, and now to really understand what does pet parents need. So I do feel that I know the market. But, if you're just going through all of this trouble and you haven't had a conversation with at least, 20 or 50 people that's going to be your customers, and they all were like, yes, this is great, it might not be a product that is going to take off. So you also need to take that into consideration. And at the heart of it all, beyond the certification and engineering, I still believe that I wanted to create these products because of our dog, making sure she has the absolute best products and that she can be comfortable. And unfortunately, there was a lot of companies and pet products that fell very short, that made me feel I can't just keep on complaining about these pet products that don't last. If I want someone to do something, I might be that someone. So we often ask companies to do better, and honestly, we should. We should hold companies accountable for what they put out. But when we truly understand what better requires, like the engineering, the audits, the financial trade-offs and things, it also allows us to really appreciate the brands that genuinely go that extra mile. And I mean, transparency, being transparent about what it is that you do, I feel is one of the most honorable stuff that businesses can do, because there is so many greenwashing out there where companies aren't doing anything, but they put a marketing campaign behind something and now it looks like they're doing something. So sometimes it's a company choosing to show its work, even when that work is imperfect and ongoing. Yeah, so definitely there's quite a lot to think about. And, before we close, I'd really invite you to kind of join our conversation as well. And if you find brands that is genuinely, feel that it's going that extra mile, it's, structure is so sustainable, it's very transparent, thoughtful, please do share them with us, like whether it's a DM or tag us on something, because I would love to shine some more light on these amazing companies that is doing well, because it's not about being perfect, it's really about trying. And let's start to celebrate companies that are showing their work, even when it's messy or involving. Sustainability is not a label. It's really discipline. And the more we treat it as such, the more resilient the businesses we build and the ones we choose to support will become. Thank you so much for listening to me. And honestly, if this episode resonated with you, I truly appreciate your support by leaving us a review on Podchaser or sharing this episode with a fellow crazy bird, or maybe even a startup founder. It doesn't just help the show, it allows us to actually reach more people and bring on even bigger, more impactful guests who can continue adding real value for you. And if you haven't already, make sure that you are subscribed to our newsletters as well, so you keep on getting all the updates from us. And also, we'd love to hear your thoughts, like what stood out for you today? Did anything shift on how you actually see sustainable products or companies building them? And have you started making some more intentional, maybe even regenerative choices in your own life? Or maybe if you just want to come and say hi, come and find me. I am mainly on Instagram at Mama Earth Talk, where Mama Earth has a voice, and it's us crazy birds. See you in the next one.